So what is the Every City, Every County, Every Life campaign? So basically, Farm&City just believes that it takes three local advocates in every community in order to advocate for the local governments to end traffic deaths. So basically, we want every city, every county, and every metropolitan planning organization or MPO in Texas to commit to ending traffic deaths through Vision Zero. And so we're looking for three local advocates in every city, every county, and every MPO across the state. So what is Vision Zero? So Vision Zero is basically just a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while also increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. It was first implemented in Sweden in the 1990s and has been proven successful all across Europe, and now it's gaining momentum in a lot of American cities, such as Los Angeles, Seattle, Denver, New York City, and various other cities around the country. Vision Zero starts with the ethical belief that everyone has the right to move safely within their communities and that the system designers and policymakers share the responsibility to ensure safe systems for travel for everyone. So let's talk a little bit more about what is currently happening, what we're currently doing versus the Vision Zero approach. So currently, traffic deaths are seen as an inevitable and unfortunate byproduct of our transportation system. But we want to flip that on its head and change the narrative with Vision Zero to show that traffic deaths can be preventable. In the state of Texas, we've had a traffic death on Texas roads for every day since November 7th of 2000. That's nearly 21 years, and we've had about 10 deaths per day on Texas roads. And currently, the current system works, you need perfect human behavior in order to prevent collisions, and it works with individual responsibility. The safe systems approach of Vision Zero would integrate these human failings into a safe system in order to prevent fatal and severe crashes. And that way, the individual responsibility will be shared with the transportation planners as well as local elected officials. When we talk about saving lives, it's often thought of as something that's very expensive, but the transportation system in Texas currently costs a lot of money. And what we don't talk about is the taxpayer dollars that are being spent on emergency services and also other things like healthcare. So we could be using this money in a better way for a safe systems approach that would help prevent fatal and severe crashes and prevent that money that's being spent on those things. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the key components of Vision Zero. So public commitment from key elected officials is one of the most important things of Vision Zero, because these are the people who are going to be in charge of like coming up with the action plan and getting everything implemented. So having that commitment is super important. Another important factor is data-driven planning and evaluation. So if you look over to this graph over here, you can see that different modes of transportation result in like disproportionate safety impacts. And you can also see how 50% in the city of Denver, 50% of traffic fatalities occur on just 5% of their roads. So having all of that data is super important so that we can create like systems that are safe for everybody, no matter what mode of transportation you're using. This also goes into like multimodal streets and having streets that are safety, no matter what mode of transportation you're using. If you look down at the little graph at the bottom, it shows about how the faster you're going, the more likely a pedestrian is to be fatally or severely injured in a car crash. So having context appropriate speeds is super important, because as you can see at 40 miles an hour, you only have like a small cone of vision. And when you're driving, it doesn't seem like that, but looking at this graph, you can see like how important it is to be going slower speeds where there are going to be pedestrians and everything. So other key components are going to be accountability and transparency and prioritizing equity and meaningful community engagement. In 2018, the only two cities in Texas that had any sort of Vision Zero plan were Austin and San Antonio. And then by 2019, we had a lot more cities and Harris County also popping up, but there's still like 945 more cities. I think it's like 200 more counties, and then 22 more metropolitan planning organizations that still need Vision Zero implemented in order to have a safe systems approach all across the state of Texas. So we just talked a little bit about what Vision Zero is, and if you want to learn more, you can check out the Vision Zero network, and we have all of these links in the resources that we sent, and I'll also go ahead and send it again right now in case anyone joins late. And then we're also going to be sending everything at the end. I think these links are super helpful for anyone who just wants to learn anything more. So yeah. So again, we just went over a little bit about Vision Zero, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about collecting data on your community. And then later we're going to go over sharing stories and reaching out to elected officials. So this is the CRIS query database or the crash records information system. And this can just be used to collect data on like your community and fatal crashes in the area. It shows a lot of different factors like the date and the time, just so that that data can be used when you're talking to elected officials to talk about why this is so important. And I know this seems like a lot of information, but we do have all of these instructions located on our website. And we're gonna also be sending this out at the end in case anyone wants to like go over it. And we can also talk about it and give it like an example at the end in case anyone wants to go more in depth about it. And this is the cost of crashes calculator. A lot of these numbers came from the CRIS query database that we were just talking about. And this just talks about how expensive it really is for traffic crashes in the state of Texas. These numbers right here are just coming from the North Central Texas kind of government area. But a lot of these, this is created by Farm&City for everyone to use. So we will be sending this out to everyone to look at after this. And then now Kara's just gonna go over some more ways to collect data on your community.
Okay, thank you, Kaya. So I'm Kara, the actual Kara here. And so yeah, continuing and talking about other ways to collect data on your community. So we talked about, well, Kaya was talking about the CRIS query tool and then that cost of crashes calculator. And those are great ways to collect more information about the statistics in your community and about the financial cost of those crashes. But there are some other methods that you can use as well that kind of create a fuller, more complete picture. And so two examples here are doing a walk audit or doing a photo voice project. So I'll just go over them briefly now, but a walk audit is basically just assessing a specific route for its walkability, its comfort, its accessibility, its safety. It's something you could modify if you wanted to make it a bike audit or just a general street audit too. You can change it up to however you want it to be. And basically you would just identify a route that you want to assess, gather a group of people, plan a time to walk together, and then you walk the route and take notes and take pictures if you want to. And there are a lot of great toolkits out there that can help you do this, that have checklists and really kind of walk you through the walk audit. So for example, AARP has a great toolkit, and we have some other links as well in that link that Kaya put in the chat. Another thing that you could do would be a photo voice project. So photo voice at its core is really just telling stories through images. You take pictures of a story that you want to tell, and then you add captions that reveal the bigger story behind those pictures. And then you can share those images and pictures to tell your story. It's very similar to a walk audit in that you do it with a group of people and you decide together what you're going to do. You decide to take pictures over a week or a month or however long you want in response to a prompt like, how do you get around the neighborhood, or what makes it difficult to get around the neighborhood? And then after you take your pictures, you come together, talk about them and the stories behind them. And then you can create captions for those pictures and then share those stories. You can share it online or with elected officials, however you want to do that. And so some great things about walk audits and something like a photo voice project, it's a way to get kind of a broader perspective from your community. You can involve children, people with disabilities, the elderly, a lot of different people can be involved. And it's also a way to include people who maybe aren't comfortable or don't have time to actually meet with an elected official or go to a public meeting. And it's just really, it gets the word out more about what you're doing as well, since you'll be doing it in a group and you communicate with more people. So these are some examples of things you can do. This is really meant to be more of a starting point though. Walk audits and a photo voice project are both very structured, kind of formal ways that you can do this. And you can definitely use that structure, but you can also kind of take it and run with it and use it as a way to collect more information about your community. Oh, there we go. All right, so that now we've talked about Vision Zero, learning about that, and then collecting data on your community. The next big part of advocating for Vision Zero in your community is sharing stories and gathering support. And this is really something that you'll be doing throughout your entire time, really advocating for Vision Zero. But we just wanted to point out a couple of specific things here. So as you're sharing stories, it can be something more formal, like you could have a blog post or an op-ed. And we have some resources also in that document that Kaya shared in the chat that can give you some tips about writing an op-ed if that's something you choose to do. It can be more informal though. You can just use social media or word of mouth and raise awareness and encourage other people to work with you and join you. And it's also, we just want to note a little bit about the importance of sharing stories when you're talking about traffic crashes. It's a really impactful way to get your message across, but it can also be very difficult, especially if you're talking about stories of loss. So we just wanted to note, when you're sharing someone else's story, first of all, always get informed consent from them. But then also when you're sharing someone else's story or your own story of a loss, just be mindful of the emotional toll of sharing that story. We also want to note that as we talked about with the core elements of Vision Zero, traffic deaths can best be prevented through changing systems. So try to focus your stories on systemic problems and solutions, and think about not as much about kind of an individual at fault, but how you can use that crash to talk about what are the solutions that are more at a system level that could be implemented. And then lastly, another core assumption of Vision Zero is that all roadway incidents are preventable. And so we try to talk about them as crashes instead of accidents. And that can be really hard because we all hear about car accidents in the media, but an accident kind of gives off the impression that it's something that is unavoidable. It just kind of happened. Whereas a crash is more, it really reinforces that message that these are preventable. It is like a failure in the system. So moving on then, the last step here is reaching out to your elected officials and urging them to adopt Vision Zero. And this is kind of the key part in Vision Zero advocacy at the local level. So the first thing you would do is reach out to your elected officials. And we're not going into depth on how you would do this just because it's pretty different for every local government's website. But if you're whether you're looking at the city level, county, or your metropolitan planning organization, just go onto their website and you should be able to find information there about who your elected officials are, how to contact them, and when public meetings are held. When you're reaching out to them, you can use an email letter template that Farm&City's created that's also linked in that document there. And you can use that to ask them to adopt a Vision Zero resolution or to ask them to meet with you for a one-on-one meeting so you can explain more about Vision Zero. So this would be, for example, if you're reaching out to your city council member for your district. You can also sign up to speak at an upcoming public meeting. That information should also be available online. You should be able to find meeting dates and agendas and locations, unless they're virtual. And for some meetings, you may be able to just show up, but others you may have to sign up beforehand to speak. So just check on that before you just show up at a meeting. And then lastly, we just want to note, feel free to reach out to Farm&City if you need any help navigating your local government, because it can be a bit confusing for sure, especially if you're looking at the county level or metropolitan planning organization level. That can definitely be a little bit confusing. So after you've reached out to your elected officials, hopefully you get to talk with someone. And the most important thing there is just being prepared and plan what you're going to say beforehand. So you'll want to talk about what Vision Zero is and why it's needed in your community. So you'll bring information with you that you can use as talking points. You can bring the Vision Zero core elements, which was included in that document we have in the chat. We also have created by Farm&City, a Texan's Guide to Vision Zero Advocacy that goes over some great talking points, and any other notes that you have about Vision Zero that that really stand out to you of why you think it's important. And then we encourage you also to bring any data and stories that you've collected. So that can be those statistics from the Chris Query tool, it can be information from a walk audit, it can be personal stories from your community or yourself. And have all of those as notes for yourself, but also bring copies that you can share with your elected official. And when you're there, your big ask is asking them to sponsor a Vision Zero resolution. And so just a note here of what a Vision Zero resolution is. A resolution is different from an ordinance in that it's not really changing law. It's not putting something into policy. It's more like a promise. It's the government saying that they're going to do something, pledging to do something. And so a Vision Zero resolution does a couple of things. First, it sets a target goal for zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries. So for example, it might be by 2050, we aim to achieve zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries. It calls for the creation of a Vision Zero task force. And then third, it calls for the creation of a Vision Zero action plan. And the task force will be tasked with creating the action plan, which is what will get the local government to zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries. And lastly, in this meeting, just be prepared to have multiple conversations. This might, not happen just when you meet with an elected official once. You may need to talk with them a couple of times. And definitely, if they have questions and you can't answer them, that's an opportunity where you could say that, you're not sure right now, but you can look into it and reach back out to them and keep that conversation going. So that goes over just a really broad, big picture overview of what we think it takes to get Vision Zero resolutions in every city, every county, and every MPO in Texas by these steps. But now, lastly, we just wanted to show kind of what this looks like after a resolution is passed to give you all an idea of what all of this work is going towards. So here's an example of a Vision Zero resolution. This is from the city of Dallas. This is just an excerpt from it, and the resolution is pretty short. So you can see here that it has those three key things that I talked about. The first section, the city council adopts a resolution that commits the city to a goal of zero traffic fatalities and a 50% reduction in severe injuries by 2030. So that's setting their goal. Second, the city council hereby directs the city manager to develop a Vision Zero action plan by December 2021. So it's best practice to have a deadline in there when the action plan will be created. And then section 3, the city council hereby directs the city manager to develop a Vision Zero task force that will collaborate with city departments on the development of a Vision Zero action plan. So that's just what that looks like kind of in resolution language. Then after the resolution would come the action plan. And this is just planning out how the municipality plans to get to Vision Zero. So this is an example from the city of San Antonio. They're one of the first cities in Texas to adopt Vision Zero. So they're a few years into it right now. You can see, though, this is from their original action plan. If you look on the left, you can see their table of contents where they talk about what Vision Zero is, their organizational structure, their process for creating the action plan, and then Vision Zero in actions, where they talk really about their goals of what they want to do, and then funding and implementation and their Vision Zero milestones. If you look in the middle here, you can see these are all of the partners that worked with the city of San Antonio in creating this action plan. So it's really something that Vision Zero involves, not just the transportation people, it involves a lot of different people at the government all working together, bringing in a lot of different perspectives and a collaborative approach. And then on the right, that's just a little snapshot from one page of the action plan, just to give you an idea of really how it leans into using data. They're showing their traffic fatalities in 2015 and then 2016, and then some specific milestones that they were setting in their action plan. And then after the action plan would be Vision Zero implementation. And so that's actually moving into having policies and really making changes to streets and enforcement and that kind of thing. So the city of Austin is another city that implemented Vision Zero a few years ago. So these are coming from their most recent updates in 2021. You can see on the left, that's a little snapshot of the high injury network map. And if you go actually in that, the document that Kaya shared in the chat, you can find the link to the high injury network map, which is an interactive tool. And it's actually pretty neat to look around on. But that's something that most municipalities will do is we'll start for Vision Zero of really mapping out where their most dangerous roadways are so they can focus their efforts there. And then you can see in the middle and the right, this is an example of a road, an intersection that was redesigned through Vision Zero. So the middle picture is what it looks like now after it's been redesigned. And on the right, you can see at the top, that's what it used to be. And the bottom is what they plan to do to change it. And so some of their changes included creating a new raised median that you can see in that picture. They also added new shared lanes for pedestrians and bicyclists that were protected. They changed the ramps to make them safer for bicyclists and then also to make them ADA accessible for people in wheelchairs. So that's kind of a big example of just what this all looks like. This is a couple years after the resolution, but this is what really Vision Zero is working towards. And so with that, that's really everything about that we wanted to go over in this presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott White, who is the Deputy Director of Farm&City. And he's going to be the main contact for all Vision Zero work going forward. And then we can answer any questions. If people want to do a quick demo of the CRIS tool, we can do that too. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I am Scott White. I'm Deputy Director with Farm&City. And first, before we get too far, I want to thank Kaya and Kara for doing a wonderful job putting this meeting together tonight and for putting this presentation together. So thank you both for the wonderful job. And just so all of you know, in a way, I am just as much of an advocate as each of you. And I was reading the chat here and seeing some of the concerns that we've been looking at. Elizabeth talking about loss of a good friend because of an inattentive driver while they were crossing the street. And one of the things that we can talk about here that is the effort of our, the result of our good efforts is this year as part of the state legislature, we actually got a law passed in conjunction with several other partners that is actually going to make it, it's now going to be on September 1st, a crime if you hit somebody while they are walking in a crosswalk. Amazingly enough, it is currently not a crime to hit somebody in a crosswalk. And that's the kind of things that we need to change, is that focus in that vision where we're making it more concerned for making it easier for people who are in cars versus making it safer. And we want to really help push those kind of changes. So not only will on September 1st, it be illegal to hit somebody while they're walking in a crosswalk, the law will also now read as you must stop and yield. These are small changes, but they have a big effect. And if we can bring these kind of changes to every city, every county, every MPO, it means that we're going to be able to make our streets safer for everyone. And part of the reason we want to do the county and the city and the MPO is because each of these have different jurisdictions. And so there are some roads that are maintained by TxDOT, there are some maintained by your county, some maintained by your city. And if we can really get every one of these entities to buy into this understanding, we can push the policies and the kinds of changes we need to make our streets safer. So I want to let everybody know, really appreciate your time coming here and listening. And we want to take a few minutes to listen to your concerns and how we might help you become better advocates